Hello, Jason. It's Friday, April 25th, and I want to start off by congratulating you on your late season Roll Up the Rim win. You may indeed be the very last person to ever roll up a winning rim this year. And so, according to my research, that should make your winning coffee that much more tasty. Today's video comes to you in 6 parts, so I apologize if in presenting these 6 parts I sound a little bit rushed. Because quite frankly, I have a lot of stuff to get through really quickly. So maybe I should stop hesitating. Go! Part 1, Badass Mother Fridays. Today I want to talk about a director, writer, and filmmaker. He's the man responsible for critically acclaimed TV series like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its spin-off Angel, Firefly, and Dollhouse. And he's also been on the writing teams of movies like The Avengers, Cabin in the Woods, Dr. Horrible's Sing-Along Blog, Alien Resurrection, and Toy Story. I'm talking, of course, about TV and film writing phenomenon and nerd culture icon Joss Whedon. Now, his writing alone is enough for me to put him on Badass Mother Fridays, but you know how I roll, I don't like to leave it there. And in explaining why I chose him for today's video, I want to talk about the diversity of his characters, particularly his female characters. But first, there's one thing you need to understand about Joss Whedon. He's extremely aware of his role as a writer and as part of an industry that has conventions. Conventions which, for the most part, he seeks to subvert and overcome, especially through characters who refuse to fit into stereotypical roles, unless they're fitting those roles in order to be reflexive. For example, consider Buffy the Vampire Slayer. In an interview, Joss Whedon described her as the little blonde girl who wanders into an alley in every horror film and ends up getting killed. Only in Buffy's case, she's not this scared little girl, she's empowered and she fights back against the forces of evil. By creating a character like Buffy, what Joss Whedon is essentially doing is taking the stereotype, the blonde innocent girl who has no power, and subverting it, making her the hero, the one with all the power. And this is a trend which he follows through in pretty much all of his other works. For example, consider 3 female characters from the TV show Firefly, Zoe, Kaylee, and Saffron. Zoe, the main character's second in command, is described by her own husband as a warrior woman, someone who can quite frankly be depended on to fight back against anyone. She's also a seasoned war veteran, trained with a gun and ready to kill at the drop of a hat. But much of the tension surrounding her involves her relationship with her husband, Wash, and her captain, Mal. Her and Mal are both war veterans who fought on the wrong side of a war which, quite frankly, left very few people alive. They've been to hell and back together, and quite frankly, the viewer's left with an impression that each would die for the sake of the other. And yet, in one episode, Zoe is forced to choose between saving her husband or saving this captain character, and without even a hesitation, she saves her husband. And so on one hand, we have this ruthless warrior woman, while on the other we have someone who cares enough about her husband to sacrifice, quite frankly, the strongest relationship she has. Next, there's Kaylee, the ship's mechanic. She's a natural-born engineer and is more comfortable hanging out with the boys in greasy overalls than hanging out with the girls. And yet, she refuses to be pushed into the tomboy stereotype. When she is forced into this tomboy role, she fights back by insisting that she wants to be treated like a lady, and in one episode she becomes obsessed with an extremely girly pink and frilly dress. Once again, we see a female character who is allowed to fit in one role but isn't pigeonholed there. They're allowed to explore other sides of who they are as well. But so far, we've only talked about heroic characters. What about female villains? How do you handle that subject? To that point, there's a character who may or may not be named Saffron in Firefly, and she appears in a couple of episodes. In her first episode, she ends up married to the captain, and she plays the submissive wife role. But we later find out that she's doing just that, playing the submissive wife role, in order to entrap him. She thus uses the expected conventions of a submissive wife in order to subvert the control that men have over women, and she ends up with control over Mal. It's through feigning weakness that she gains power, and so we see another female character who refuses to be simple. In fact, of all the female characters I've listed so far, she's the one who in my opinion is presented as most equal to Mal overall. They are, in a way, gender opposites of each other. And so through these characters we see Joss Whedon's attempt to subvert what we expect from certain types of characters in television shows and movies. And it's not just women that he does this with. He applies the same technique to people from different age groups, different races, different religions, etc. And the epiphany that we're left with through examining Joss Whedon's world is that there are no good or bad people. There are just people who are different. People who disagree on what's right, what's wrong, what someone should be and what they shouldn't. But at the end of the day, it's up to the individual to define themselves in relation to the people around them. Thus, social conventions, like the conventions of television and film, are completely manufactured and don't need to be subverted if you can just ignore them. If you're interested in Joss Whedon or his views on gender equality, there's a really good video for Equality Now that you should watch. I'll link it below. Spoiler alert, he's at a feminist conference, and his first line is, "I don't like feminists." Because how could that possibly go wrong? Part 2, The Reading Challenge. I finally finished Always Looking Up, The Adventures of an Incurable Optimist by Michael J. Fox. And, like most books I read, I have to say I was surprised by this book, but I was surprised by this one in particular for 2 reasons. Firstly, I was amazed at how articulate and well-spoken Michael J. Fox is. Not that I expected him to be a bumbling idiot, but he's actually a really good writer. He has a great grasp on the use of metaphor and the flow of a sentence. And so potentially I would be interested in reading other works by him, but I won't be reading this book again because, point number 2, it was really boring. And the majority of the reason that I found it so boring was that, at the end of the day, there's one topic in this book: Parkinson's disease. He does divide the book into different ways that he views Parkinson's disease, but at the end of the day, you're reading about one thing the whole way through. And so that's really why it took me so long to read, because I just couldn't stay interested. Part 3, Challenges of the Past. Now, recently I went through a collection of my old schoolwork stuff, and I found some interesting artifacts, particularly as they relate to the challenges that I've set for myself this year. Now remember, these are all from my past, like, way in the past. So, it's kind of interesting how they correlate. Exhibit A. I have a bunch of certificates from the Glenwood Elementary School running program. As you can see, over the course of 2 years, I managed to walk 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 miles. And then the next year, 10, 15, and 20 miles. So it appears that even as a young child, I was obsessed with running a set number of miles. Next, I found these ribbons, which describe the number of books I read in 1 year. This one's for 10 books. This one's for 20 books, it's a little bit bent, and this white fancy one with gold lettering is for reading 30 books, which you can't really see because of the light. There we go, 30 books! Next, we have a few language-related awards. This is my certificate for returning to French education because, as you may know, I lived in the United States for 3 years, and I had to get a private tutor. Because they don't teach French in the United States. If anything, you'd learn Spanish in elementary school. Then, I have my Grade 8 French Award Medal, and my Grade 10 German Award Medal. But then, beyond our challenges this year, I have a couple of other awards that I want to share to you. Namely, my Citizen of the Month Award, followed by my Second Citizen of the Month Award, followed by my Outstanding Citizenship Award, followed by my Principal's Award for Citizen of the Year. For someone who wasn't an American citizen, I sure won a lot of citizenship awards in America. Next, I have this award for Significantly Improved Penmanship. That's got to be good, right? Followed by this writing award for the Young Authors program in my elementary school. Also, in relation to the ongoing murder mystery project, I have this award, which tells me that I'm a super sleuth, so I'm qualified. Next, I have this certificate proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that I am capable of counting to 100. I can do it, I swear. Which is good, because I also have this award being numero uno, number 1, in math. Who saw that coming? I'm a math genius. Also, for the bike riding challenge, something which we might want to start thinking about sooner rather than later, I've got this certificate as a bicycle mechanic. And finally, I wanted to share with you a relic from a bygone age, my official first season Pokemon League badge book. What you would do is you'd play games against other people, and you would get little stamps that you would... find a page with stamps on it. You would get little stamps that you would earn towards achievements and special prizes. Also, on the back of the booklet, it shows that I'm a certified coach for the Pokemon League, so I'm kind of a big deal. Part 4, Hockey. I have to say that my predictions for the number of games in each matchup are probably all going to be off. Particularly in the Western Conference, where I could see each of the 4 matchups going to 7 games. Mostly because 3 of the 4 are already guaranteed to go to 6 games. Part 5, Battleship. Your attack on F10 was a miss, and I attack E2. And finally, the tri-language word of the day. Considering my discussion of Joss Whedon and his strong female characters, the word for today is going to be an easy one. Woman. Which, in French, is femme. In German is Frau. And in Italian is donna.